Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Blake's Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for Destiny's Way by Walter John Williams. This is the 14th book of the Star Wars The New Jedi Order series. I think it's the 14th book. Something like that. So pretty far into the series now. I've been really enjoying The New Jedi Order. It's had a handful of duds for me so far, but I have been really enjoying most of it. And the most recent book before this one, which is Traitor, was my favorite book in the series so far. Kind of neck and neck with Star by Star, which I think was book 6 or 7. But I really loved that book a lot, and so I was very excited to continue. Especially considering the way that that book resolved, having slight spoilers here. I assume if you're watching this video, you're somewhat familiar, at least with what the story of New Jedi Order is. But in that book, you had Jacen Solo, who was kind of captured by the Yuuzhan Vong, who had invaded the galaxy. And then this book was kind of his return to his family and all the people that he knew. So I was very excited to see how that would kind of change the dynamic of all the characters and see him, you know, reunite with everyone and all that kind of stuff. And I had heard this was actually a really excellent book in the series. You know, there's a few books in the series where I've heard some people say, oh, they're not as good. Other ones I've seen are fan favorites. This is one of the few that I've seen where most of the time when I see people talk about it, they really talk about a lot of good stuff. So I was very excited. And I have to say, I agree with that general idea. This is one of my favorite books in the series so far. Certainly, I would say top 3 or something like that, if I had to guess. But I really loved this book. I thought it was awesome. So to get started talking about some good stuff, first of all, like I said, I love the just sense of reunion of this book, especially with Jacen, who has spent the last several books away from everyone else. Seeing him come back and the events of Traitor and how that changed him, and seeing him come back and reunite with everyone was great. Also coming back with the character of Vergere, who I'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit, was also great, seeing her interact with everyone. And seeing just all the different characters coming together and doing their thing was great. You know, a lot of interaction between all the characters with Han and Leia and Luke and Mara Jade and the Solo twins and everyone. You know, everyone kind of just doing their thing together. It was really great. And I really enjoyed that. And I really love the characters themselves. To me, the standout in this book was definitely Vergere. Alongside, I would say, Luke and Jacen, who the three of them have really great dynamics with each other, with, you know, all three of them together, or just Luke and Vergere, or Luke and Jacen, or Jacen and Vergere. I just loved their dynamic that they had, and Vergere is one of the standout characters of this series for me now, after Traitor and Destiny's Way. She's one of those characters that I had seen pop up here and there, and I thought she was interesting, but I didn't quite get her. But across these two books, she has really impressed me. She kind of reminds me of a character similar to like Kreia over in Knights of the Old Republic 2, where, you know, you don't really know what her goals are. You just know that she talks a lot about the philosophy side of things, about the Force and morality, and about, you know, the light side versus the dark side, and different things like that. You know, why we perceive the Force and morality the way that we do, and all that kind of thing, which I found super interesting. I loved everything about that in this book. And she talks to Jacen a lot about that, and she talks to Luke a lot about that. You know, she's kind of seen as not necessarily an enemy, but a character who is not trustworthy by the New Republic in this book, and so she's being held prisoner when she brings Jacen back. And so Luke has a lot of conversations with her while she's kind of being held prisoner. And I loved those conversations. They were so interesting. If this whole book had just been Luke and Vergere just talking to each other, I would have been perfectly fine with that, because I loved that stuff in this book. I thought it was super interesting, super thought-provoking. All that kind of thing. Then you have Luke and Jacen interacting and seeing how Jacen has changed and all that kind of thing. Great stuff with other characters also. You had the Yuuzhan Vong characters. You had several of them in this book, whose names I can't all remember because there's like several of them and they all got weird names because they're Yuuzhan Vong. But I really enjoyed them. I always enjoy seeing the Yuuzhan Vong seeing their culture, seeing the way that they are interacting, seeing the way that they're perceiving the war, all that kind of stuff. A lot of great stuff there. Some interesting politics in this book also, with, early on there was a scene with Pelayan that I really enjoyed. Pelayan's one of my favorite EU characters, and I really enjoyed him in this book, even though he was in it only very briefly, but I loved his scene in this book. And then you have all the other characters, trying to figure out things with the war effort, trying to figure out how to really kind of push back the Yuuzhan Vong, how to gain the upper hand in the war. That was all really interesting. And then you also have Luke and the other Jedi trying to form a council, a new Jedi council, but knowing, with the way that the Jedi are currently perceived by the government, which is not great, or the New Republic really as a whole, that they should probably involve some politicians in that and everything. So trying to figure out, who can be involved in this group and who can kind of do the best job and all that stuff was also really interesting. Just a lot of good character stuff, a lot of good politics, like just everything here really worked for me. As far as other stuff, good action in this. Not super plentiful. There's a bit of action towards the beginning of the book, and there's a big action scene towards the end of the book, and that's pretty much the extent of the action for the most part, but I thought it was all really well done. The ending of this book has this big climactic epic action scene that was really cool, and really enjoyed that a lot. It felt appropriate considering the massive buildup that was taking place over the course of this book, which is another thing I like about it, where, just things keep happening and it kind of builds up to this big climax. And there's also interesting stuff going on with this thing called Alpha Red, which I'm not going to talk about what that is because I would consider that a spoiler, but if you have read this book, you know what I'm talking about. Really interesting stuff there. Does not come into play maybe as strongly as I would have liked. I hope that gets followed through with in the next few books, but that was really cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. As far as anything that I didn't like in this book, the only thing really is that, kind of 2/3 to 3/4 through the book, around there, it was kind of starting to drag a little bit. This is a pretty lengthy book. It's like 450 pages. And even though a lot of good stuff was happening, it did kind of start to feel like it was going on a little at some points. I was starting to kind of lose interest at some points. Because a lot of the stuff that I really loved in this book was in like the first half to 2/3 and at the very end. Kind of that in-between section was not quite as engaging to me all the way through, but it was still good. It just, there was times where I was feeling a little bit more bored than I was at other points. But overall, it was still really good, for sure. So yeah, this was a really excellent book. I really enjoyed it a lot. Definitely one of my favorites in the series. Picking my favorites is both kind of easy and kind of difficult. Because if I were to point out like 5 or 6 of the books that are my favorites, I can do that pretty easily. Narrowing it down to like a top 3 is a little more difficult. But I think I could pretty confidently say this, Star by Star, and Traitor are my favorite books in the series so far. I really loved it. I was not expecting to have a new favorite book in the series after Traitor, because I read Traitor and I loved it. And I was like, there's no way the next book can be that good again. And I would say this at least comes pretty dang close. So it was like there's a few points in the series where I'm like, this sequence of books is just amazing. And so far, Traitor plus Destiny's Way together is like the high point of the series for me so far, definitely. Usually in the other books, there's at least some kind of drop off between 2 books, even if I enjoy both of them. Whereas this is like 2 just bangers in a row. So great stuff. I really enjoyed it a lot. As far as a rating out of 10 that I would give this book, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. Excellent book. One of the best in the series so far. And I hope that this continues through the rest of the series, because I still got, I think, 5 books left. So if it can keep this quality all the way through the end of the series, that would be amazing. I don't expect that to happen. I'm assuming that there's going to be some kind of drop off towards the end of the series. I've heard that the next books, the Force Heretic trilogy, for some people it's kind of slow. So I don't expect that to reach the heights of Traitor or Destiny's Way, but it'd be nice if it did. So let me know in the comments if you have read Destiny's Way and what you thought of it. Is also one of your favorite books in the series, or maybe one of your least favorites. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of the next few books as well. Getting towards the end of the series now, so let me know if you think that the rest of the series kind of keeps up this momentum, or if it kind of drops off a little. whatever you may think. I'll probably be reading the next book here sometime within the next couple of months, I would expect. And I would hope to finish the series sometime in the spring, or at the very latest, very early summer. So really enjoying it so far. So that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.